Take the children, not me, the widow begged. The cowboy made a different choice. The rider came at dusk, when the light turned everything the color of old blood. He wasn't expected. Nobody was. Not out here where the land stretched flat and empty for miles, where the wind moved through the sage like something searching. The widow saw him from the window, a dark shape against the red sky, moving slow, deliberate. Not the kind of riding that meant trouble was chasing him. The kind that meant trouble rode with him, patient and sure. She wiped her hands on her apron, flour still dusting her knuckles, and stepped onto the porch. Her son, barely 8, pressed his face against the doorframe behind her. Her daughter, younger, stayed inside, humming something tuneless, while she played with corn husk dolls on the kitchen floor. The rider stopped 30 feet out, didn't dismount, just sat there, one hand resting on the saddle horn, the other loose at his side. He wore a duster the color of dust itself, and his hat brim cast his face in shadow. But she could see his eyes, cold and clear, like creek water over stone. "Ma'am," he said. His voice was low, graveled from disuse or smoke or both. She didn't answer right away. "Out here, you learned to measure silence before you broke it." "You lost?" she finally asked. "No, ma'am." The wind picked up, tugging at her skirt, at the dry wood of the porch. The sun was almost gone now, just a thin line of fire along the horizon. In another 10 minutes, it would be full dark, and the kind of cold that got into your bones would settle in. "Then what brings you?" He shifted slightly in the saddle, and she caught the glint of something at his hip, a revolver, worn but well kept. Not the kind of man who carried a gun for show. "I'm looking for a woman," he said. "Widow, 2 children. Heard she lived out this way." Her chest tightened, but she kept her face still. "Why?" "Business." "What kind?" He didn't answer, just looked at her, steady and unblinking, like he was reading something written across her forehead. Then his gaze moved past her, to the boy in the doorway, and something flickered behind his eyes. Something she couldn't name. "You her?" he asked. She could lie, could say she was hired help, that the widow had moved on, that he had the wrong place. But liars out here didn't last long, and she had a feeling this man knew the difference between truth and invention, the way a wolf knows the scent of fear. "I am," she said. He nodded slow. Then he dismounted, boots hitting the dirt with a soft thud. He didn't move toward her, didn't reach for the gun, just stood there, reins in hand, waiting. "Your husband," he said. "He owes somebody money?" Her throat went dry. "He's dead." "I know." "Then why are you here?" The rider looked at the house, small, weathered, leaning slightly to one side like it was tired of standing. The barn behind it was worse, half collapsed. The roof caved in on one end. A single cow stood in the yard, chewing grass that wasn't there. It was the kind of place that told a story without words. Hardship, loss, survival by a thread. "Because dead men's debts don't die with them," he said. She felt the ground shift beneath her, the way it did sometimes in dreams, when you realized you were falling and there was nothing to grab onto. "How much?" she asked. $300. It might as well have been 3,000. 3 million. She didn't have $3 to her name, let alone 300. Her husband had left her nothing but this patch of dirt and 2 children who needed feeding. "I don't have it," she said. "I know." "Then what do you want?" He looked at her again, long and level, and she saw something in his face that she hadn't expected. Weariness, not cruelty, not hunger, just the bone-deep exhaustion of a man who'd done this too many times and knew exactly how it would end. "I got orders," he said. "Take what's owed, one way or another." Her son stepped out onto the porch then, small and thin, his shirt too big for him, sleeves rolled up past his wrists. He looked at the stranger with wide eyes, not quite afraid, not quite curious, just watching. The rider's gaze dropped to the boy, then back to her. "How old?" he asked. 8. "The girl?" 5. He nodded again, slow, like he was doing arithmetic in his head. Then he looked past them both, toward the barn, the cow, the broken fence, calculating, weighing. You got anything worth $300? He asked. She almost laughed. Do I look like I do? He didn't answer. Just stood there, quiet, the wind tugging at his coat. The sun was gone now. The sky was bruised purple, fading to black at the edges. Somewhere far off, a coyote yipped, and another answered. Finally, he spoke. I'll be back tomorrow, he said. Sunrise. You think on it. Think on what? He swung back into the saddle. Movements easy and practiced. How you plan to pay? And then he was gone, riding back the way he came, swallowed by the dark. She stood there long after he disappeared, her son's hand slipping into hers, small and warm and trusting. Inside, her daughter was still humming. She didn't sleep that night. She sat at the kitchen table, a single candle burning low, watching shadows dance across the walls. Her mind turned over possibilities like stones in a river, searching for something solid to hold on to. But every path led to the same place: loss. By the time the first light crept through the window, pale and thin, she'd made her decision. It wasn't a good one, but it was the only one she had. Morning came cold and clear, the sky washed pale by a sun that gave light but no warmth. She'd been awake since before dawn, pacing the small kitchen, her mind turning over possibilities that all led nowhere. She could run, take the children, the cow, what little food they had, and disappear into the hills. But winter was coming, and she didn't know the land well enough to survive out there. And men like him, men who came collecting, they didn't give up easy. She could beg, offer to work it off somehow, though she had no idea what work a widow with 2 children could do that would be worth $300. And even if she could, how long would that take? A year? 5? Or she could offer what she knew he would take. The thought made her stomach turn, but she'd learned long ago that survival didn't care about dignity. When the rider appeared on the horizon, she was ready, or as ready as she could be. She'd sent the children inside, told them to stay in the back room no matter what they heard. Her son had argued, eyes fierce and protective, in a way that broke her heart. But she'd been firm, and he'd obeyed. The rider dismounted in the same spot as before, same slow, deliberate movements. This time, though, she saw more. The lines around his eyes, the scar along his jaw, faint but deep, the way his hand never strayed far from the gun, even when he seemed relaxed. Morning, he said. Morning. He waited. She took a breath, tasting dust and fear, and something bitter she couldn't name. Take the children, she said. His head tilted slightly, like he wasn't sure he'd heard right. What? The children. They're young, strong. They can work. Someone would pay for them. Laborers, ranch hands, whatever. Take them. Leave me here. He stared at her, and for the first time something cracked in that stone-still face. Not shock, not anger. Something quieter, sadder. You offering me your kids? I'm offering you what I have. They're not livestock. I know what they are. Her voice broke just slightly and she hated herself for it. But if someone's taking something from me, let it be me who decides what. The silence that followed was heavy, thick. The wind had died completely and the world felt held in suspension, waiting. And you just stay here? He asked. I'd survive. Would you? She didn't answer. They both knew the truth. He turned, walked a few paces toward the barn, hands on his hips, head bowed. She watched the line of his shoulders, the tension there. He stood like that for a long time. So long she thought maybe he was praying, though she doubted men like him prayed. When he turned back, his face was unreadable again. I got a job, he said. Collect debts. Been doing it 5 years. You know how many times I've taken kids? She shook her head. Never. He said it flat, final. Not once. Then what do you usually take? Land, cattle, tools, whatever's worth something. He looked at the house, the barn. But you got nothing. So take them. No. The word hung in the air like a gunshot. Then what? She asked, and she heard the desperation creeping into her voice now. Couldn't stop it. You said you had orders. You said you'd take what's owed. I did. So? He walked closer, stopped a few feet from the porch, close enough now that she could see the color of his eyes. gray like smoke, like ashes. So I'm making a different choice, he said. She stared at him, trying to parse the words to find the trap hidden in them, because there had to be a trap. Men like him didn't just walk away. What does that mean, she asked. It means I'm not taking your kids, and I'm not taking you. Then you'll just leave? No, he said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world, and she felt something twist inside her. Hope, maybe, or confusion, or the beginning of fear in a new shape. I don't understand, she said. Your husband's debt, he said. It's mine now. What? I'll pay it. $300. His name gets cleared. Yours too. She felt the world tilt, like the ground had opened up beneath her, and she was falling through space. Why would you do that? Because I can. That's not an answer. He looked at her, long and steady, and she saw something in his face that she hadn't seen before. Shame, old and deep, buried under years of hard living, but they're all the same. I got my reason, he said. Tell me. He was quiet for a moment, jaw working like he was chewing on words he didn't want to say. Then finally he spoke. I had a wife once, he said, and a daughter. Lost them both to fever 5 years back. I was out doing this, collecting debts, taking what people couldn't afford to lose. Came home, and they were already in the ground. She felt something crack open in her chest. After that, I didn't care much about anything, he continued. Just did the work, took what I was told to take, didn't ask questions, didn't think. He paused, looked at the house, at the door where her son had been standing. But your boy, he looked at me yesterday the same way my daughter used to, like I was supposed to be something more than I was. The silence stretched between them, heavy with things unsaid. I'm tired, he said quietly. Tired of being the man who takes. Just this once, I want to be the man who gives something back. Before she could respond, a sound cut through the stillness. Hoof beats, distant but coming fast. Multiple riders. The cowboy's head snapped toward the sound and his hand dropped to his gun. Get inside, he said. What? Now? She didn't argue. Something in his voice, sharp, urgent, told her this wasn't the time for questions. She ran into the house, grabbed her children, pulled them close. Through the window she watched. 4 riders came into the yard, hard and fast, dust rising in clouds behind them. They pulled up short, surrounding the cowboy in a loose circle. She recognized the one in front, a man named Garrett who worked for the land company her husband had borrowed from. Thick-built, mean-eyed, the kind of man who enjoyed his work a little too much. Calhoun, Garrett said, voice carrying across the yard. Hell you doing out here? So that was his name, Calhoun. My job, Calhoun said, voice flat. Your job's to collect, not stand around jawing with widows. I collected. Garrett's eyes narrowed. That's so? Where's the money? I got it. Let's see it then. Calhoun didn't move. I'll bring it to the office. Office says show it now. Office can wait. One of the other riders, younger, twitchy, laughed. Sounds like he don't have it. Garrett's face darkened. You went soft on her, didn't you? I did my job. Your job's to take what's owed. Money, land, livestock. Hell, I don't care if it's the dress off her back. But you take something. He leaned forward in the saddle, eyes hard. I don't see nothing. I said I got it. Then show it. No. The word fell like a stone, and the air went tight. The widow's heart hammered against her ribs. Her son pressed against her, trembling. She could feel his breath, quick and shallow, against her arm. Garrett's hand moved to his gun, slow and deliberate. The other riders shifted, sensing blood in the water. You refusing a direct order? Garrett asked, voice low and dangerous. I'm telling you I'll handle it my way. Not good enough. Calhoun stood perfectly still, but the widow could see the change in him, the way his weight shifted, his shoulders squared, like a wolf that had stopped retreating. Garrett, he said quietly, you need to ride away now. Or what? Or this goes a direction nobody wants. Garrett smiled, cold and sharp as a blade. You threatening me? Warning you. With what? You're one man, Calhoun. We're 4. You really want to dance? That depends. You really want to find out how many of you make it home? For a moment, nobody moved. The air felt electric, charged like the seconds before lightning strikes. The widow could see Calhoun's hand, loose and ready at his side, could see the way he stood, balanced, coiled, dangerous in a way she hadn't fully understood until now. Then Garrett's hand moved, fast, but Calhoun was faster. The gunshot cracked through the morning, sharp and final. Garrett jerked backward, eyes going wide, a bloom of red spreading across his chest. He fell from his horse, hit the ground hard and didn't move. The other riders scrambled, cursing, reaching for their guns. But Calhoun already had his trained on them, steady as stone. "Don't," he said. They froze. "Take him," Calhoun said, nodding at Garrett's body. "Get out of here. Tell whoever sent you that the debt's paid. This is over. You just killed—" He drew first. "You all saw it." Calhoun's voice was cold, empty of feeling. "Now take him and go, or you'll be joining him." The young one, the twitchy one, looked like he wanted to try. His hand hovered over his gun, trembling. But one of the others, older, grayer, put a hand on his arm. "Let it go," the older man said quietly. "But let it go!" For a long, terrible moment, the widow thought it would explode into violence, thought the morning would drown in gunfire and blood. But something in Calhoun's eyes, something flat and certain and utterly without mercy, made them hesitate. One by one, they holstered their guns. Two of them dismounted, hauled Garrett's body across his saddle, tied it down with rope. Blood dripped into the dust, dark and thick. Then they mounted up and rode out, fast, without looking back. Calhoun stood there alone in the yard, gun still drawn, smoke curling from the barrel. The widow watched him through the window, saw the way his hands shook. Not much, but enough. Saw the way his shoulders sagged, like something inside him had broken. She realized she was holding her breath. Slowly, carefully, she opened the door and stepped out onto the porch. He didn't turn, didn't acknowledge her. Just stood there staring at the dark stain in the dirt where Garrett had fallen. "They'll come back," she said quietly. "Yeah. How many?" "More than before. Enough. Then you should go." He holstered his gun, finally looked at her. His face was gray, exhausted. "Yeah, I should." But he didn't move. "Calhoun," she said, and his name felt strange on her tongue. Intimate somehow, like she'd earned the right to use it. "You can't fight them all." "No." "Then what do we do?" He smiled faint and said, "We? You just killed a man for us. That makes it we." He looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in his eyes. Then he nodded. "All right," he said. "Then we get you out of here." They worked quickly, quietly. Calhoun helped her pack what little they had, clothes, food, a few precious items she couldn't bear to leave behind. Her children watched with wide, frightened eyes, but they didn't ask questions. They'd learned young that sometimes silence was safer than words. While she packed, Calhoun went to the barn and saddled the cow. Not ideal, but it would carry the children. He moved with practiced efficiency, hands sure despite the tension coiled in his shoulders. When everything was ready, he stood in the middle of the small house, looking around like he was memorizing it. "You'll need supplies," he said. "There's a town 2 days north." "Sister there? How did you—" "You mentioned her yesterday, when you didn't think I was listening." She had, just once, when her son had asked about family. "She'll take you in?" he asked. "She will?" He nodded. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a small leather pouch, heavy with coins. He set it on the table. "What's that?" she asked. $300. Your husband's debt. Take it to the land office, clear the title on this place, then sell it. Should give you enough to start fresh." She stared at the pouch, then at him. "I can't take that." "You already did." "Calhoun, it's done." His voice was firm, final. "I made a choice. Let me live with it." She felt tears prick her eyes, hot and unexpected. She'd cried so much in the years since her husband died. Cried until she thought she had nothing left. But this was different. These weren't tears of grief or despair. They were something else, something warmer. "Why?" she asked, voice breaking. Why would you do this? He was quiet for a moment, looking at his hands. You asked me earlier if I had reasons. Truth is, I got more than one. Tell me. He walked to the window, looked out at the land, empty, harsh, beautiful in its own wounded way. When my daughter died, I blamed myself. Thought if I'd been home, if I'd been there instead of out taking from people who had nothing, maybe I could have saved her. He paused, jaw tight. I know that's not how fever works, but knowing something and feeling it are different things. She waited, understanding that he needed to say this, needed to let it out. I spent 5 years punishing myself, he continued, taking from folks like you, telling myself it was just business, that I didn't have a choice. He turned to face her. But yesterday, when you offered me your kids, I saw it in your eyes. The same look my wife had at the end. That willingness to sacrifice everything for the people you love. A tear slipped down her cheek. Calhoun, I couldn't take them. Couldn't take you. And I realized something. He stepped closer, and she could see the rawness in his face, the years of pain he'd carried alone. I do have a choice. I've always had one. I just didn't have the courage to make it. She reached out, took his hand. It was rough, scarred, warm. Thank you, she whispered. He squeezed her hand gently. Don't thank me yet. We're not out of this. Someone's got to make sure you get to your sister safely. You're coming with us? Far as I can. Her son appeared in the doorway then, small and solemn. Mama, are we leaving? She looked at Calhoun, then at her son, then back. Yes, baby, we're leaving. Where are we going? Somewhere safe. The boy looked at Calhoun, studying him with those two old eyes. Is he coming too? For a while. The boy nodded like he'd expected that answer. Then, to her surprise, he walked up to Calhoun and held out his hand. Calhoun stared at the small hand for a moment, something breaking and mending all at once in his expression. Then he took it, shook it gravely, man to man. You take care of your mama, you hear? Calhoun said. I will. And your sister. Yes, sir. Calhoun crouched down to eye level. You're the man of the family now. That's a hard job, but I think you can handle it. The boy's chin trembled, but he nodded, fierce and determined. They left at noon, when the sun was high and hot. Calhoun rode ahead on his horse, the widow and her children following on the cow. It was slow going, but steady. The land stretched out around them, vast and empty, and for the first time in years, the widow felt something she'd almost forgotten: hope. That night, they made camp in a shallow canyon, sheltered from the wind. Calhoun built a small fire, and they ate the last of the bread she'd packed, along with some dried meat from his saddlebag. The children fell asleep quickly, exhausted, curled together like puppies. The widow and Calhoun sat on opposite sides of the fire, not speaking, just existing in the same space. It was comfortable, companionable, the kind of silence that didn't need filling. Finally, she spoke. What will you do? She asked. After we reach my sister's. He poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling up into the dark. Don't know yet. They'll be looking for you. Yeah, you could come with us. Start over. He smiled, sad and knowing. I appreciate that, but you don't need me dragging my trouble into your new life. Maybe we want you there anyway. He looked at her across the flames, and she saw something in his eyes. Longing, regret, a desperate kind of hope. Don't offer things you don't mean. I mean it. The silence stretched between them, heavy with possibility. Ask me again when we get there, he said finally, if I'm still alive. She nodded, understanding. Some things couldn't be promised, only hoped for. They came at dawn on the second day, just as the town appeared on the horizon. 5 riders this time, spread out in a line, moving fast. Calhoun saw them first, pulled up short, his hand already on his gun. Go, he said to the widow. Fast as you can. Don't look back. Calhoun, go. She wanted to argue, to fight, to refuse to leave him, but her children were watching, frightened and confused, and she knew what she had to do. So she kicked the cow into motion, urged it forward, even as her heart screamed at her to turn around. Behind her, she heard Calhoun's voice, calm and clear. That's far enough. The riders pulled up 20 yards out. She recognized one of them, the older man from before, the one who'd told the young one to let it go. We don't want trouble, Calhoun, the man called. Just want to talk. Talk then. Garrett was a mean son of a bitch. Nobody's crying over him. The man shifted in his saddle. But the company's got rules. You killed one of ours. That can't stand. He drew first. Don't matter, you know that. Calhoun was quiet for a moment. The widow had stopped 50 yards away, watching. She knew she should keep going, but she couldn't make herself move. So what now? Calhoun asked. Now you come back with us. Face what's coming. And if I don't, then we make you. Calhoun laughed, short and sharp. You really want to try? There's 5 of us, Calhoun. I know. I can count. His voice went hard, cold. Question is, which 5 of you want to die today? Because I guarantee at least 3 of you won't make it home. The riders shifted uncomfortably. The young one from before was there again, hand hovering near his gun, eyes wild. Or, Calhoun continued, you could ride back and tell them the truth, that Garrett got what he deserved, that the debt's paid, that this is over. They'll never buy that. Then sell it better. The older man shook his head slowly. Can't do it, Calhoun. You know I can't. For a long moment, nobody moved. The sun crept higher, turning the sky from gray to pale blue. The widow's heart hammered so hard she thought it would break through her ribs. Then a voice rang out, small, clear, fierce. Leave him alone. Everyone turned. The widow's son had slipped off the cow, was standing in the open, hands clenched at his sides. Tommy, no, the widow started, but he ignored her. He didn't do anything wrong, the boy shouted. That man was going to hurt us, and he stopped him. That's not bad. That's good. The older rider looked at the boy, something softening in his weathered face. Then he looked at Calhoun, at the widow, at the little girl still sitting on the cow. He sighed, long and deep. Hell, he muttered. Then louder. You know what? I didn't see nothing. Did any of you see anything? The other riders looked at each other, confused. I said, did you see anything? The older man repeated, voice sharp. Slowly, one by one, they shook their heads. That's what I thought. He looked at Calhoun. Way I hear it, Garrett rode out to collect a debt and never came back. Probably fell off his horse. Hit his head. Tragic accident. Calhoun stared at him. Why? The older man shrugged. Because I got a daughter about that age. He nodded toward the girl. And if someone stood between her and Garrett, I'd want them to walk away clean. He touched the brim of his hat, then turned his horse. Come on, boys, nothing to see here. They rode away back the way they'd come, leaving nothing but dust and silence. Calhoun stood there, frozen, like he couldn't quite believe what had just happened. Then the boy ran to him, threw his arms around his waist, and Calhoun's knees nearly buckled. The widow dismounted, pulled her daughter down, and walked over slowly. When she reached them, Calhoun looked at her with eyes full of wonder and disbelief. I know, she said. I know. He laughed, sudden and breathless. And she realized it was the first time she'd heard him laugh. Really laugh. It transformed his face, made him look younger, lighter. We should go, he said finally, before they changed their minds. They reached her sister's house by evening. It was small but well kept, with a garden and a fence and smoke rising from the chimney. Her sister came out when she heard them approach, eyes wide with shock and then joy. There were tears, hugs, rapid explanations. And through it all, Calhoun stood back, quiet, ready to leave. But when he turned toward his horse, the widow caught his arm. You said to ask you when we got here, she said, if you were still alive. He looked at her, and she saw the war in his eyes, the longing and the fear, the hope and the doubt. So I'm asking, she continued, stay, not because we owe you, not because you saved us, but because we want you here. I'm not, he stopped, swallowed. I'm not a good man. You're trying to be. That's enough. Her son tugged on his sleeve. Please? Calhoun looked down at the boy, at the trust in those young eyes, and something inside him finally broke free. All right, he whispered, all right. Epilogue. 3 years later, the widow stood on the porch of her sister's house, her house now too, and watched the sun set. The sky was painted in shades of red and gold, and the air smelled of grass and coming rain. Calhoun was in the yard teaching her son to fix a fence. Their daughter, she thought of her that way now, his and hers, was chasing chickens, laughing when they scattered. Her sister appeared beside her, 2 cups of coffee in hand. She passed one over. "You happy?" her sister asked. The widow thought about the long, hard road that had led here, about the day a stranger rode into her yard and made a choice that changed everything. "Yes," she said, "I am. He's good to you?" "He is. And the kids love him." "They do." Her sister nodded, satisfied. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the day fade. Inside, the widow knew there would be dinner. There would be laughter and stories and the easy warmth of family. There would be Calhoun's hand finding hers under the table, steady and sure. There would be a life built not from what was taken, but from what was given freely. Out in the yard, her son said something, and Calhoun laughed. That same surprised, delighted laugh she'd first heard on the road 3 years ago. The sound carried on the wind, warm and full of promise. The widow smiled, sipped her coffee, and thought about the cowboy who'd been given a choice between what was easy and what was right, and chose different. The sun dropped below the horizon, and the stars began to appear, one by one, like small lights guiding them home.